I've been searching for this place, and now it's my responsibility. My fight.
Aujourd'hui, on est à la Gamescom et on va faire une petite interview avec Mikael Kasurinen. How are you today, Mikael?
I'm really good, thank you.
Very good. Just arrived this morning and we are lucky to try Control this day. So first, would you like to introduce yourself, like your role in the game as a game director?
Yeah, so my name is Mikael Kasurinen. I'm the director of this game, and it's very much a passion project for me, something that I've been thinking about for a while. And now it's done, it's ready, and it's an amazing moment for me, and I think for the studio as well.
Excellent. You were working on Alan Wake franchise, and also you made a small path in DICE, I think, like for Battlefield series, and you came back for Remedy. Like, why choosing to come back to your first love?
Oh, that's a great question. So after Alan Wake, I felt like I wanted to do different types of games. I love story-driven, linear adventure games. There's nothing wrong with that, but I felt after Alan Wake that I wanted to do something a bit different. So I worked at Avalanche Studios with the Mad Max game, which is an open-world game. Yeah, and then went to DICE and worked on Battlefield 4 on the kind of story part of it, the main campaign. And I had like a design lead type of a role. Enjoyed that very much, loved working at DICE. But after Battlefield 4, Sam Lake, who I worked with on Alan Wake, he contacted me and kind of asked about like, how would I feel about coming back? And to me it felt like, the right time to return to Remedy. And Quantum Break looked great. He showed to me the game, and I saw it looked like a fun game to jump on board with as a game director. And but then at the time already, looking at what made me kind of leave Remedy in the first place, like I was interested in more open-ended experiences, games where they're more player-driven, right? Like the players can choose how they approach the game. I was interested in that, and already at the time, I wanted to do something like that at Remedy after Quantum Break, and Control now is that game.
Yeah. Because you began with Quantum Break, something quite special with transmedia and a lot of choices, but it was more linear than maybe other games. Would you like to just give us a few words about the story of Control? What's completely new? Because Alan Wake was kind of a movie, like a relecture of In the Mouth of Madness in a way, or Cigarette Burns, a mix between Stephen King and Carpenter, something like this. You always tried to bring something new to narrative content, and this time, what will be different with Control?
Right, so we like to challenge ourselves, like how to tell stories, and with every game we explore different options on how to do that, and Control is no different. It's hard to talk about the game without giving it away, so I'm gonna be very vague. I'm sorry about that.
Don't spoil it.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it because I think experiencing it without knowing much about it is the best way to go through that game, and I don't want to kind of give too much away. But if I summarize Control a bit, so Control is a third-person action game. With supernatural abilities that you use to fight against an extraordinary threat. And it is happening in this strange location that we call the Oldest House, which is a shifting place. It's a very complex, with a lot of depth and variation, and a more open-ended environment. And a big change for us is that players can choose how to go through it. So there are main missions, but there's also side missions, there's exploration. It's a more like an open-ended Metroidvania type of an experience. And that sets it apart from the previous games that they've done. And in Control, you play as Jessie Faden, and Jessie is an outsider to this world. She enters the building in the beginning of this game, and through certain events, she actually becomes the director of this organization that is called Federal Bureau of Control. And they are in crisis. There's this strange threat that has taken over the building, and nobody can leave, and it's under lockdown. And now Jessie, as the new director of this place, needs to start to deal with that. And she's coming here because she's looking for answers to what happened to her brother in her childhood, and she knows that the Bureau had something to do with it. And that's the setup. And what was important to me was that the setup is straightforward. Like, it's something that you can easily understand, or easily. Like, there are a lot of kind of strange elements to it, but plot-wise, it's pretty straightforward. Like, you are Jesse, you come to this place like wanting to find answers, and things kind of go bad. This strange force takes over the building, takes over humans, corrupts them, transforms them in a kind of a creepy, unsettling way, and you need to start dealing with it. And there's a lot of surprises, a lot of twists, a lot of depth and complexity to this world. Not everything is as they seem. And that's pretty much as much as I want to tell anybody at this point.
Okay, no spoiler.
Yeah.
And you were talking about a Metroidvania, like it's something new, I think, from your games. Like it's the first time. I think I've seen that it's possible to get some new abilities during your game, like with side quests, and maybe you won't be able to fly, for example, if you haven't done one. How is it working? Like, if you miss something, how do you do to push players to improve themselves, like to get some new abilities if you're completely free?
Right. So what's different in this game is that we put a lot of the responsibility of the experience to the player, right? Like, unlike in Quantum Break, where we defined every single moment, we defined when you get every single ability, everything was defined by us. And the players kind of just go through that story. It's like going through a movie. And with Control, we wanted to do this differently and leave the responsibility to the players. So what that means in practice is that you can choose how to go through this experience, but of course, there are abilities to be found that are purely optional. You don't have to go and get them if you don't want to. And you can choose to do that. But then again, of course, it might be hard for you if you don't have all the different abilities. But it's not impossible. You can try to pull it off if you want. Again, it's up to the players to choose how they go through it. Some people will want to find them all, and that's what I would suggest everybody to do, because all the abilities are awesome. They're really fun to use and makes the kind of game come alive. But at the end of the day, we made this choice, like in kind of as a design pillar, that it's up to the players. They don't have to if they don't want to. Having said that, there are a couple of abilities that are mandatory that you will get through the story, because they are used for puzzles and things like that wouldn't work without the ability. So there are a couple of these type of things, but the majority of the abilities are purely optional.
Okay, for maybe another question about gunfights, like you were working in some franchise like Max Payne and things like this, you always feel a touch of Max Payne in your game, like at the end in Quantum Break with freeze mode and things like this. Now you will bring paranormal powers and also a special gun, like with the shape changing all the time. How is it working, like to combine both? Like how did you get the idea?
Oh, that's how these ideas happen is that it's a complicated creative process that happens through time, right? Like, it can take years for all these different little ideas and concepts to come together to kind of form a whole, like a cohesive concept, like this is the game that we want to do. And how the gun came up with was through identifying the issue, like on my part, that I didn't want Jessie to be a hero who carries this kind of a arsenal of guns with her. Like, all her pockets, it felt like little pistols and, machine guns, and it just didn't feel right. I wanted her to be a hero like a Jedi in Star Wars, or like, it's like there's some kind of simplicity to her and her role. Like, she's the director, she has these abilities, she has one powerful weapon, and that weapon is a part of her identity as the director. Like, when you see a lightsaber, you know that that's a Jedi. It's the same kind of thing. Like, you see the service weapon, that's the director of the Bureau. So it kind of started from that kind of a simple place. Like, this is what we want to do, and then I started concepting, like, okay, what could the gun be like, and different visual ideas. And well, I mean, if you pay attention, you can see how And I don't want to reveal a lot, but when you look at the building, like the brutalistic architecture and style, and they look at the gun, you can see some similarities. Yeah.
And about this, like I really like the graphics and about architecture, for example. It reminds me the Soviet style, like USSR from maybe the 30s, and it's really minimalistic. Like and I like the shape and lightnings have always been important in your game, like since Alan Wake, I think, and maybe after. Like, do you have some source of inspiration from movies? Like, maybe you have seen Mandy, like the horror movie which was released this year, for example, with lights from the 90s, and it's quite a good shape. Like, what are you inspiring movies or things like this?
Well, really early on, I thought about the visual identity first. So we started talking about like the brutalistic architectural style, and together with that, there's this kind of minimalism, simplicity of form, honesty of materials. Whatever you see is what you get. Like simple things like wood, concrete, glass, steel, things that you can understand that work really well in this world and for gameplay as well, with all the kind of destruction and the reactive environments. So the brutalistic architectural style was there really day one, like this is what we want to do. And we all love that kind of a simplicity, and together with it comes this interesting lighting. So brutalistic architecture is not just about the shapes of the environment, but how to light it as well. There's a certain kind of style to it and so on. From kind of a movie perspective, I actually haven't seen Mandy yet, but it's on my list. I definitely want to check it out. But there's the Beyond the Black Rainbow. So that was the, to my understanding, the previous movie by the same director that I checked out, and I absolutely loved that movie. It was beautiful, fantastic movie from a visual standpoint, style and story. So that definitely was there on the background as an inspiration. But it was multiple different things, and when I talk a lot about new weird with Sam. Like we want to find this world that feels real and strange and incomprehensible at the same time. That is kind of a combination of components that together form a whole. And part of it is that there's this acceptance of strangeness and people trying to deal with that. But at the same time, them kind of being at peace with the thinking that we may never understand what is going on. So this is not the story necessarily that gives you answers all the time, poses a lot of questions, but what we ask people to do is to embrace this world. So inspiration-wise, like for instance Tarkovsky's Stalker movie that came out, I think it was early 70s, where there is this world which we jump into, where people are used to the strange elements. It's the normal world, but there's one strange thing happening in it, and everybody's behaving like it's normal. And that's what we're kind of doing with Control as well. Other movies, Kubrick's Space Odyssey.
Of course.
Definitely. And everybody who's seen the ending, which is just mind-blowing, like beautiful moment with amazing visuals, amazing concepts and so on. And when there's this kind of, when you meet something, like you kind of meet an alien presence that you can't understand what is happening. So Space Odyssey does a great job in doing that kind of incomprehensible experience. So those are, I think, the kind of a main inspiration points. Then there's, of course, when you look at, for instance, the characters that we have, Twin Peaks is a major inspiration for us, and it has been, like, since the 90s. So you can see a bit of Twin Peaks, I think, in every game that we've done, with quirkiness, strange characters, and so on. And especially, I'm not sure if you've seen the latest season 3.
Not yet.
Yeah, amazing. You should check it out. It has moments that definitely inspired us with Control as well.
Okay, excellent. Another question, maybe more practical. You were working a lot of time with Microsoft for your last games. Would you like to be your own editor? Like you're something between an independent and something else. And just yesterday, we heard Insomniac Games was bought by Sony, for example. What would you think? Have you been approached, for example, by Microsoft to be purchased? Like, and what's your point?
Well, we are an independent studio, and we own many of our own IPs, like we own Alan Wake, we own Control, and so on. So, and we're growing. We have multiple different projects going on, not just Control, and we like where we are. And what I think is important to us is that we are creatively independent. Like, we do our own thing. We don't try to necessarily compete with the big studios and so on. We want to stand apart, we want to be unique, we want to be different, and we want people to recognize a Remedy game, that there's a kind of a flair to it that people love. And we like where we are, and I think we're going to kind of continue to be as an independent studio, and I think that's a choice that we're doing, so I don't think we're kind of entertaining any other options at this point, at least.
You're right. And maybe a question about the engine. Like, you have a special engine, which name is Northlight engine. Which improvements did you bring for this game? Like, is it supporting ray tracing, I think, or something like this on NVIDIA?
Right. So yes, it has ray tracing with NVIDIA. I'll be honest, I don't know much about the technical details about that. But regarding gameplay, we've done a lot with the engine. For instance, we updated our animation system. So there was, like, it's a longer story, but we had to switch from Morphium, and we basically built our own animation system, which uses motion matching, allowing for really good control over the character, but at the same time we are able to have good looking animation. So it helped us a lot, and also helped us with performance as well, which was problematic in Quantum Break. So we have an entirely new animation system for the characters and gameplay. And then we changed the physics engine as well
which looks excellent.
Oh, thank you. So we're using PhysX now, which is basically a kind of open source. So we can actually make it do exactly what we want it to do. So that was a big plus for us. And also AI. So basically we revamped the entire AI system and built our own, so that we can have enemies that actually can function in the complicated reactive environments that we have. So the enemies can fly as well, they can navigate this kind of a more reactive environments, that it's not a simple thing to do because it's so dynamic. So the AI can in real time choose what they do. We are not in control of that, so the enemies are just kind of thrown in there and they do what they do. And that was also a huge change for us. So we pretty much updated all the kind of core components of gameplay, AI, animation, and physics.
It's interesting because I think personally, like, a lot of studios forget that AI is really important, like to get surprised and things like this. Maybe just one last question to conclude. Quick question, I forgot. Yes, just I was about. I will cut after. It's not a problem, but yeah, I wanted to say there was just last one. Yeah, excuse me. About AI, how is it working? For example, if you get some new abilities, is it possible for them to get some too, like flying or things like this? If you get more powerful, will they just adapt themselves?
Yes, actually. So many of the enemies can do many of the things that you can do as well, and that was a big design pillar for us, like using the environment against the opposition. And that's a huge part of what Jess is able to do. She has telekinetic abilities, so you can basically control almost any object in the world and throw them against enemies. She can use them to create a shield that protects her and so on, or she can use the abilities on herself so that she can fly. And the enemies can pretty much do the same things. So they can also use the environment and kind of pick up like furniture or whatever and throw them at the player. They can create shields as well, they can fly. But for the sake of having certain kind of clarity to the situation, not all of them can do everything. So there's a kind of visual identity to each enemy type. Like this enemy can do that, and that enemy can do that, and so on. So that the player can kind of, let's say, survey the situation and understand, like, who do I take out first, and so on. So there's actually a lot of tactical complexity to every fight, where you need to kind of pay attention to where you're fighting against, who to take out first, or what kind of ability to use yourself. So yeah, it is a complex sandbox that you jump into when combat starts and so on. and it takes into account like your abilities, enemies' abilities, and the environment and all of that stuff.
And maybe just to conclude, you as a game director, you must be playing some other games from the industry. Like, which one is interesting for you from the past, or which one are you waiting for? Like, for maybe just to inspire yourself, like.
Oh, that's a good question. Looking back, especially with Control, I think the biggest inspiration to me was Dark Souls. I absolutely love that game. The boldness of it, the choices regarding world building, storytelling, and so on were unique and different, and you can't help but be in awe of what they did. And I love Dark Souls. I played through each one of them, and Bloodborne as well. So that's just what I love. But then I think the other types of games, I like Soma from the Swedish developer that had really interesting sci-fi setup dealing with identity, personality, and kind of goes into the human condition very deeply. So Soma, I absolutely love that game as well. Upcoming games, I have to say that I'm kind of I was caught off guard by Watch Dogs Legion, and what they're doing is fantastic and really.
With the gameplay, just to explain to people, like you can choose any PNG from the world, like, and playing with it. So it's quite new in a sense.
Yeah, no, I've never seen anybody do that before.
Never.
And how they're gonna make storytelling work with that, and I have no idea. I'm eager to find out, so I'm definitely gonna be playing that and see how they're gonna make it work.
Well, excellent. Thank you for your time, Mikael. And see you for the program and interview. Bye.